Click here to subscribe our channel and do not forget to press the bell icon to get regular updates of our videos.
Hello friends, good evening to all of you. I am back with another video on Sociology Optional subject for UPSC CSC Mains examination. In this video we are going to cover social movement, collective action and revolution. That's why it is part 2, and part 1 we have already finished protest and agitation under politics and society. So friend, please do these 3 hours. It will really motivate me to do this awesome course. Share as much as possible so that more and more people will get benefited. Comment and like the video and ask any doubt if you have. And now you can also follow us on FB page, that is facebook.com/Unorthodox Academy. So friend, as you know that we are covering slot 5, that is politics, Western Indian, and paper 1 we are going to finish politics and society by covering the last topic of it, that is the social movement, collective action and revolution. So first we consider the social movement. So when a group of individuals tries to bring or resist social change fully or partially on the basis of ideology, then it is known as movement. And when these changes or resistance are desired in social sphere of life, then it is known as social movements. And there are following characters of social movement. The first being a group of individuals, then it has ideology, organization, and the goal, that is the change or resistance that it want to bring about. So all the above features are necessary for a social movement. So now we consider the theories of social movement. The first theory is the relative deprivation theory. So the Emmanuel Stoffer, in his book American Soldiers, propounded the theory of relative deprivation. He believes that when a group of people feel relatively deprived than the other group of individuals in terms of power, privilege and prestige, they unitedly take mass action to end up their deprivation, and it is the cause of social movement. So basically he studied the American soldiers, in which black soldiers were not paid well like white soldiers, and their jobs were also derogatory than the whites. This always led to a sense of deprivation among the black soldiers who went for mass action, and he believed that the feeling of relative deprivation is the cause of social movement. So now we consider the criticism of this theory. So Gore and Eberle believed that merely relative deprivation is not enough for social movement, because many groups and communities condition their mind that for their deprivation their luck of or gods will be responsible, hence they do not overcome in the form of social movement. Oscar Lewis believes that in those communities where culture of poverty is developed, the theory of relative deprivation cannot be applied. Then M.S.A. Rao believes that unless or until group does not realize that the other groups are responsible for their suffering and they can come out of it through their mass actions, social movement cannot take place. So now we consider the strain theory. That is the second theory. So Neil J. Smeltzer believed that the stability in social system depends upon value consensus, and that is the general agreement in all sections of the society about the desired things in the society. Until the consensus remains, the social stability order remains maintained. But when society comes in contact in set of new values which is in contradictions with the old one, it brings strain in social structure. And those who support the old values supports the reactionary movement, whereas the supporters of new values support reform, revolutionary and other pro-change movement. Hence Smeltzer believed that the new value system is responsible for social movement in the society. So now we consider the criticism of strain theory. So the Smeltzer is a structural functionalist who seems to be supporting status quoism, because for him new values always bring disturbances in the society which may not be true. And new values cannot essentially bring social movement, because many a times the new values are so powerful and logical that old values simply become irrelevant, and new system emerges on the basis of new values without brings ups and downs in the society. For example, modern education is enriching new values, and generally the reactionary forces in the modern societies have also given up. Hence it cannot be said that it is always bring strain in the social structure. So now we see the third theory, that is the revitalization theory. So the Wallace criticized relative deprivation and strain theory by calling it a negative theory. And these two theories believes that only due to wrong reasons social movement take place in society, whereas Wallace believes that the social movements aims at bringing a new social order which will provide more satisfaction to the masses. And he identified 4 stages of social movement. So the first one is the period of cultural stability, then there is period of ups and downs, then there is a period of cultural degenerations, and the finally effort for revitalization. So this theory was criticized for not being anything new, rather it is the extension of the previous two theories. So now we consider the conclusion of the social movement. So the social movement is almost a universal phenomena, though generally not found in stereotyped tribal and primitive society. Though in early sociology, social movement was not a part of sociological subject matter because evolutionary perspective of social change was dominant. Then social movement is a very complex phenomena which takes place due to various reasons. Hence, to understand any social movement, it is important for a sociologist to consider all the three theories at a time. And these theories are not contradictory to each other, rather these theories explain three different stages of social movement. Relative deprivation theory explains the cause. Strain theory identifies the fairness of the cause or suffering, whereas revitalization theory focuses upon the goal of the social movement. And these theories have their own validity. Hence, a single theory of social movement is not enough to understand any social movement in its complexity. Now we see different types of social movements. So MSA Rao, Gore and Eberle, etc. have also discussed the types of social movements, and on its basis following types of social movement will be identified. The first being reform movements, and it aims at partial change in the society in the form of abolishing or changing some traditional practices, customs or pattern. For example, Pratna Samaj, Brahmo Samaj and Ramakrishna Mission. Then there is revolutionary movements, and this with violence means structural changes is bring about. For example, Naxalwadi. Then there is reactionary movements, it is anti-change movement, for example Arya Samaj, Deoband and etc. Then there is expressive movements, in this there is withdrawal from the society, for example hippie movement in the US. Then there is migratory movements, and in this migration is based on ideology, for example partition of India, Israel movement, etc. Then there is millennium movement and the complete change of society due to heavens interference. For example, Heaven's Gate movement in US into 1970, Falun Gong movement in late 1980s in China and Japan. Then there is redemptive movement, and it is anti-worldly or materialistic movement which believes that happiness lies in the denouncement of worldly affairs or the pleasures, for example ISKCON, art of living and etc. Then there is alternative movement, it focuses upon alter little change in behaviors of individual, for example anti-tobacco movement and say no to plastics. Then there is utopian movement, and it considered as non-realistic movement which tries to establish an ideal society, for example communist. Then there is different stages of social movements. So Herbert Blument identified 5 stages. The first is agitation, then development of we feeling, then development of morale, then development of group ideology, and the final one is development of operating tactics. Horton and Hunt identified 5 stages. The first is unrest, then there is heightened stage of excitement, then formalization, institutionalization, and the final one is dissolution. Now we see the second topic, that is the collective actions. So much of the recent relevant work on collective actions has been done by social movements scholars, principally in sociology and political science, but there is also a long-standing interest in the dynamics of collective action among economists and historians or historically oriented social scientists. So the term collective action is hopelessly broad. Taken at face value, it could possibly refer to all forms of human behavior involving two or more people. For sociological purposes, collective actions refers to emergent and at least minimally coordinated actions by two or more people that is motivated by a desire to change some aspect of social life or to resist change proposed by others. So while many aspects of collective actions has been the subject of theory and research, we organize the entry around the two questions that have received the most scholarly attention. The first concern is the origin of the collective actions, and strain theories presumes that collective action is a response to some form of disruption in the normal functioning of society. In contrast, resource mobilization theorist argues that there is always sufficient strain in society to provide the motivation for collective action. What varies the organizational capacity and resource required to do so? The distinct contribution of political process theory have been to reassert the fundamental political character and origins of collective action. The main emphasis has been on the role of catalytic events that weaken established regimes, thereby creating new opportunities for successful action by challenging groups. And the second question focuses upon differential participation in collective action. So why does one person come to take part while another does not? The oldest account of activism are psychological, the emphasis on character traits or states of mind that presumably dispose an individual to participate. Running very much counter to these psychological theories is an important rationalist tradition in the study of collective action. More specifically, we can expect individuals to participate when first they receive selective incentive for doing so, second, effective system of monitoring and the sanctioning work are operating to deny benefits to those who fail to take part, and the third one is the perspective holds that the strong attitudinal support for the aims of a movement compels individual activism. So all of the previous accounts of participation can be thought of as a dispositional. The final theory rests on a very different assumption. People participate not simply because prior dispositions impel them to, but because their network location in the world puts them at risk for participation. The causal emphasis is on existing ties to others in the movement that serves to pull them into collective actions, even as various dispositions are pushing them in that direction. Now we see the last topic, that is revolution. So when unorganized masses spontaneously bring structural change in the society through violent means, then it is known as revolutions. And there are following characteristics of revolution. The first being structural change in society, then it is through violent means, then it is with the efforts of unorganized masses, and it is spontaneous or sporadic. But some changes are structural and multidimensional in its impact, though not through violent means, and are also called as revolution, like industrial revolution, green revolution, IT revolution, and etc. So the Hannah Arendt in her book on revolution wrote that when a group of people develop a feel of belongingness and try to participate for the general social satisfaction, then only a revolution becomes successful. So Craig Brington in his book An Anatomy of Revolutions wrote that the certain collective situations are responsible for revolution. The first is the acute situations of relative deprivation, then intellectual bankruptcy of states, then insensitive administration, extreme level of dissatisfactions among the masses, and Toole identified 5 collective reasons responsible for revolution, the first being feeling of relative deprivation, then arbitrary nature of state, then spread of consciousness, general will among the masses for political participation, and a will of creating a better society. Karl Marx believes that the acute operations by the capitalists in industrial society will lead to consciousness among the proletariat, who will organize themselves to overthrow capitalism and will establish communist society via socialism. Lenin believes that merely class consciousness is not enough for revolution and recognized the importance of intellectual leadership for a successful revolution in society. He himself led the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia, whereas Mao Zedong supports cultural revolutions. Without changing the culture, the purpose of revolution cannot get accomplished. So Barrington Moore identified 3 types of revolution. The first one, the bourgeois revolutions, and those revolutions which are led by urban middle class are known as bourgeois revolutions. And in this revolution, middle class provides the leadership for the structural change. For example, industrial and French revolution. Then there is upper class revolution, which is led by state or bureaucrats to bring revolution in the society. For example, green revolution. Then the third one is the peasant revolutions, and the peasant class is more aware than the other class and their participation is more than others. For example, the Chinese revolution. So primarily revolution is a subject matter of political science because it is generally considered as overthrowing of government by the others through violent means. Hence it is political phenomena, but 18th century onward, except French, Russia and Chinese revolutions, which was mainly a political change violently, other revolutions like Industrial Revolution, Green Revolution, IT revolutions were more socio-economically than the political. Though the socio-economic changes certainly have impact over the political system, but primarily these revolutions did not aim at changing political leadership. So in contemporary sociology, revolution is considered as very progressive phenomena and it is considered as aiming at structural change smoothly. Education, health sector, employment requires revolutionary efforts to overcome these problems, especially in the third world societies. So thank you guys for listening and watching this video. Thank you.